It's Thursday, 4 p.m. Central. I'm Fred McMurray, which means this must be...
It is you. It's not Elizabeth. She's taking a fabulous vacation. Poor Karen's out sick. Jerry's traveling back from IFA. Andrea's at IFA. We're the only ones here, except for Laura and Ray. Yeah. No, not really. You don't get to take over. Well, first, welcome to Pillars of Franchising. Okay, tell me, what's the word on the street? Yeah, I mean, it would make me nervous too. I mean, first you had a big run, everybody was investing in subways, and they allowed their franchisees, instead of protecting territories, they allowed them to cannibalize each other, which meant that they opened very close to one another. What could be a wildly successful store now had to essentially split their sales with a store 2 blocks down the road, and that creates issues. Then not too long ago, we had a situation where they were demanding everybody have the exact same hours, irrespective of where exactly they were. Some stores might be in a downtown urban area that literally shuts down. Like when I lived in San Diego, 5 o'clock used to be, okay, not anymore, but used to be 5 o'clock during the week, the whole city shut down and there was nothing going on down there. It wouldn't make sense for a restaurant like a Subway to continue to be open 7, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Well, at this point now, the Subway owners didn't have a choice. A lot of the pricing was going to be set pricing. The menus are going to be set. Now, menus, things like that, if you think about the McDonald's model, those things make sense, right? That's why you buy a franchise. But some of the other things that they're doing really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I get that they're trying to protect the parent company. Personally, if they're not going to allow you to make a solid business decision on lower performing stores without making these costly improvements and then looking to sell one-offs, you can't divest your money, that would really concern me. I'm not a restaurateur. I do not have any interest in Subway. So I'm speaking from an outsider looking in. I can't say that I'm on the inside and I know all of the, details in the Subway franchise, but from an outsider looking in, it's not a brand that I would get involved in, nor have I been involved in several years, because it just makes me uncomfortable. Well, their FDD should be updated every year. And if there's any big changes like that, it absolutely should be. And this is the exact reason why you want to get not just any lawyer, but a franchise lawyer to review the FDD with you and keep them as a partner, because should you have some of these issues with your franchisor, you need to be able to call that franchise attorney and say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. In our franchise, we had a change of events where our national marketing fund was changing, right? Well, that had to go to a vote. And in the vote, it was stated that instead of just automatically dumping in this big increase, the franchisor was going to put it in over a course of 4 years, right? And so the owners in that case voted that they would indeed do it because it was kind of dribbled in, and they defined why they were doing it, and the owners agreed to do it. So that even if you were under a 10-year contract, maybe you're in year 2, within the next 4 years, you would be brought up to a 2% national marketing fund based on sales. Now with Subway, it doesn't appear on the surface that a whole lot of what's been happening to those franchisees has been voted on. It appears it has been said by many owners that it's being shoved down their throats. Again, I'm not a legal expert. Laura List would be a great one to talk to if she's familiar with the Subway fiasco. She might have a few things to say about that herself. Yeah, I always say if there's a lot of legal noise around a franchise, you might not want that to be the first franchise that you dip your toes into. It's not usually a good sign. Anytime the inmates get restless, it makes me uncomfortable. Yes. Boy, I have to tell you, I would have to guess that let's stick with this whole Subway theme. You know, most of our listeners and people who are looking to buy a franchise have a Subway in your community as one of the validation points that we talk about all the time. If you're considering it, talk to the owner. You know, you'll find a lot of those owners are actually working the restaurant. A lot of them find that they have to be the person making sandwiches in many cases, unless they're a multi-unit owner, a big multi-unit owner with lots of partners. So talk to those people. I mean, that's the best way to validate and get this true story of what's going on with Subway, is to talk to the people who actually own them. I just like eating at them. So let's do it.
Talking about all that food, making me hungry. But we are talking today with Thomas Scott, who is a well of franchise knowledge. He is the founder and CEO of Home Run Franchises. And Thomas has been franchising for more than 2 decades. He started out as a multi-unit franchisee, then he became a franchisor, growing Show Home's home staging to 100 locations in the early 2000s. He then started Brand Journalists, a franchise development agency that has helped 380 franchise systems and over 12,000 people to become franchise owners. He has been a multi-unit operator with top sales in each system in 3 different franchise brands. Thomas uses his experience as a marketer and franchise operations professional to grow successful franchise systems that are focused on franchise profitability and strong, positive franchise relationships. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks for the intro.
Thomas, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you guys. I missed you guys at the IFA. Like, everybody was just getting back from the IFA. It was a stellar event. Like, I was so excited to see all the energy in the franchise industry all at one place.
Yes, well, you know, I am looking forward, as we were talking about before the show. I know I'll get to see you down next month at Palm Beach Atlantic at the Titus Center for Franchising.
My favorite place. This is such an amazing educational program that focuses on franchising. That's a killer university. We're excited about that program.
Yeah, it really is. And we always like to give a shout out to Dr. John Hayes, who's doing an amazing job with those students down there. And we're obviously going to talk about him and his students here coming up. But I'd like you to tell all of our listeners and viewers a little bit about Home Run Franchises.
Yeah, Home Run is a platform brand. We have 4 distinct franchise brands. It's Up Closets is a custom closet franchise. It's kind of in the vein of a Closets by Design or California Closets. That's oddly enough a booming segment in a down market. As people are spent 2 or 3 years in COVID in their houses, they started investing massive amounts in home upgrades. And I've got everybody on this call probably has done a home upgrade in their house. And so even though there's a lot of franchise brands in the closet space, that's a boom market. We're at max capacity and we're selling franchises, and our franchisees have really, really good earnings numbers. That's just a fun business. And so much of us, if you were at home for 2 years, you watched massive amounts of HGTV. So we're all design experts. So if you're a realtor, a home organizer, a home stager, just somebody who loves consultative design work, the closet business is a lot of fun.
Well, if you're someone like me, my closet is at max capacity, and I just need help.
No, it's the builder grade closets that most houses have, which look nice, are really poorly designed. Like, I think that's the problem we have. We'll go into a closet, take everything out, do a floor to ceiling closet with 100% organizational space throughout drawers, shoe shelves, hanging and stacking, and they'll put everything back, and it only up 25% of the closet. You just don't realize how much wasted wall space there is in a closet, and how much a good closet can, how much pain. People will cry, like, they'll walk in to see it. They call it.
I would do that.
People will cry and they're just amazed, because the truth is, an unorganized closet, it creates a mental health problem. It stresses people out. They're late to work. They can't find, and they'll cry for, at the back of our van, say, friends don't let friends have closets of shame. And what we really mean is people are, ashamed of their lack of organization in their closet. And the truth is, if you have a bad closet design, it's not really easy. So we love that space. I've worked in closet franchising for years, and we did it at show homes. I've done work with some of the biggest brands in the space, and I just love that space. My wife runs the one here in Nashville, and it's a beautiful business. We went from COVID, we were running 3 Just Love Coffee franchises during COVID. We had great sales. I am a restaurateur. I've run lots of restaurants. That's a penny business. You're talking about Subway. You have to be a master of managing a P&L, managing food and labor cost. And that's like not for the faint of heart. It's a single digit between you and not making money, making a lot of money and losing money. And if you're a restaurant person, it's okay. Those restaurant people are, it's in their blood. I'm a coffee person. I ran coffee shops with breakfast kitchens. And we had 65 employees and about $30,000 a month in fixed rent on the 3 that we have. It was $2.5 or $3 million in sales. It was a great business before COVID. It was an absolute nightmare during COVID. Couldn't get staff, couldn't get coffee, couldn't get food, couldn't open the dining room. It was just, my wife was like, I got to do something else. So we started the closet franchise at the end of COVID, and she's not looked back. She has 1 employee as a van that she takes to go shopping when we're not using it for closets. A big, huge cargo van, and you fit the whole garden in the back. And people love her. She's got it's a really fun business. So that's the first brand. The second one is Dryer Vent Superheroes, which is one of the 3 big kind of brands in that space that do dryer vent cleaning. And you think that's not something. We always ask people, when was the last time you cleaned your dryer vent? And people, they look at you kind of funny, like, that's not something I've ever done. You were just telling me a story before the show about you had birds in yours, and you're my real customer. We need to talk after the show. But
I thought for sure those eggs would be hard boiled, and sure enough, on Monday there were 3 days. Oh, they're just like
an incubator. Yeah, they everybody who wears clothes should have. That means they have a dryer typically. So like you go down any street, any suburban area, anywhere in the country, and it's a once a year service. There's all this repeat business. So we love that business. It's a fabulous, inexpensive business to get young entrepreneurs in, and people who are coming out of a career, or they've been in a blue collar trade, or whether they're an owner operator or they want to scale to 8 or 9 units. It's a good business for that. We really, really like driving. And it's a really inexpensive business to get into. You don't have to have special licenses, and the training's pretty easy. The third one we have is a brand called the Lighting Squad, and that's that's the newest of the 4 we have. The Lighting Squad we created, it's kind of a first to market concept. We go after what we call nuisance electric. It's a category of work that every homeowner has. We hang ceiling fans, we replace boob lights, we hang TVs, we install Ring camera systems, we do low voltage sound systems and outdoor lighting. We change light bulbs that are really high up in entryways. It's just all the stuff that homeowners know they need to do and they can't ever find someone to do, or they just don't want a master electrician to come for $1,200. And that business, we have a special ladder that Little Giant makes for us. We call it the skyscraper. It's a 21-foot double-sided A-frame ladder that allows us to get up to 27 feet in the middle of a room. And so we have this picture of our technician on this 20-foot ladder and a 2-story entryway changing a light fixture out. And the ad says, like, everybody needs friends in high places. And we put that ad on Facebook and we get a gazillion leads for it. Because if you have a house with a really high light fixture, why are they put changeable light bulbs 25 feet off the ground? It makes no sense. Like, it's so you have to rent the ladder or scaffolding to get up there is $700 or $800. So we charge $300 for the ladder fee. It takes 2 people to set up and $150. So it's $450 for us to do that. And we're in and out in an hour. We do 4 or 5 of those a day, and there's no cost of goods. That's turned out to be a sleeper business. Like, it took off. Like, we're booked out a month in most units.
Wow, that's crazy. And you know what's funny is I looked to get Ring doorbells hooked up. I have 2 ceiling fans sitting in my garage.
Yeah, we just need to talk again. But I would come to your house and we would do your Ring doorbell, which is a couple $100, or hanging ceiling fans, and we would say, what else do you have? We hang pictures, we can clean windows, and we do all this other kind of related handyman stuff. And we do it. You could do my dryer vents,
you could do my closets.
That's what we call a nuisance. You might get around. We hang ceiling fans for people who see our ads on Facebook, and they've had those 2 ceiling fans in their garage for 5 years by the time they get around to calling us.
Yep, mine will be extinct before the lighting code, the electrical code.
The warranty's all gone. But that's everybody on your street has. Even every homeowner can think. You guys are probably all think about something that you have.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Thomas, all these franchises that you have sound really easy to get into. Can we talk a little bit about what's involved in getting into them?
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me back up. And the 4th one we didn't talk about is called Lifestyle Window Films, and that's a window tinting business for homes and businesses. Yeah. We do security film, frosting, decorative film, all the solar films. That's a really cool green industry business. That's a neat business with really, really high margins. But we built all of these businesses. All of our businesses revolve around what we call a hub and spoke system. So we have a really advanced tech stack. We partnered with Workies as an IFA supplier. It's a best in class kind of truck CRM. We do, texting and sales automation and invoicing and credit card payments and the routes and the GPS tracking for the trucks and, all the stuff that you need to run a service business. You can run all of our businesses are 100% paperless. You can run off your cell phone. You don't even need to have a laptop. Wow.
Yeah.
Really cool thing. So
that's half the battle right there.
It's a big, if you're looking at service businesses, the kind of technology that powers the business is a critical thing to talk about today. Like
that's right.
So we have really advanced technology, and it's all automated, and it's amazing what that does. Like, for instance, when we collect payment, like our lighting squad, those guys are up on that ladder. They have a tip screen. Like, everything has a tip screen today, but all of our stuff has a tip screen on it. And darn if they don't make $1,000 a month in tips each technician.
Wow. Just because of the screen.
Yeah, just because they don't ask for it. We don't have to pay it. If somebody's on a 25-foot tall ladder in your living room and they do a great job and they're really professional, clean, and they do a good job, you would throw them $50. You wouldn't even think, because that's a big thing. You don't want to get up on a 25.
Yeah.
I don't even like getting up on a 25-foot ladder, but it's kind of a fun business for the person that kind of gets how lucrative that is. So we designed everything to be scalable and similar. So all of our businesses use similar marketing. They use similar training. We have similar coaching and onboarding. It's like a hub and spoke. So there's a lot of shared kind of resources for us, and all these businesses fit together. So we cross sell between brands. Like, we'll go put a closet in and end up selling dryer vent stuff and lighting squad and window film for the other brands in that area. It's really cool. We have rack cards in the vans and they hand them out, and it's kind of crazy, like how easy it is to get somebody else's business when you're standing there.
Well, Thomas, Ray started to bring that up. So tell us, for somebody to get into these brands, your point of entry seems to be very reasonable. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
That's a perfect thing. I'm glad you said that. If you Google how much does it cost to start a business, the excerpt that Google will put up is $30,000. Like that's what it'll show is the kind of pull out kind of excerpt. If you Google how much does the average franchise cost, it's $250,000. And so that scares a lot of people away.
Yeah.
All of our businesses, from the closet is the most expensive and the lighting squad is the least expensive, run from $44,000 to $62,000 total investment. That's the van, the tools, the training, the insurance. Like something simple, like, you know, can we figure out, we like Mercedes vans. A lot of our techs drive Sprinters and Metros. I think when you roll up to a house in a nicely wrapped Mercedes van, people do notice the big oval on the front. You know, like it just says, wow, you must be, you have a Mercedes. It costs exactly the same as a Ford or a Ram. It just, you know, it's a German car. We actually switched to them because they didn't have chip problems during COVID, and that's why we started buying them. But we like them. They drive better and they're nicer and they hold their value. We underwrite the leases for our franchisees. So I guarantee the leases. So it allows you to qualify with only $700 down and the tax and title. So for a couple of grand, you get a wrapped van with ladder racks and interior racks, a bulkhead, a floor, all that stuff delivered to you. And it's a 60-month lease to own, and you own it at the end of the lease. There's no mileage restriction. We just made it really easy. So I had to take the risk as a franchisor to underwrite the things. And all that really means is if you defaulted on your lease, I would take it over and make some payments. I never have enough vans. I can get rid of vans tomorrow. You're like, it's not, that's actually a good deal for me. So, but that simple willingness to be pro franchisee, which is a core cultural part of our brands, makes it possible and knocks $30,000 or $40,000 of the cost of the franchise off the bat. Now you can go buy your own van if you want, or you can buy a used van, whatever it is. But most people just really like having a brand new van delivered. It's easy. So our total investment being in that 40 to 60 range is a lot closer to where the 25 million people are that are looking to start a business. And so when you look at those people and they look, I could start one for 30, but I have to figure all this stuff out, like software, technology, a website, marketing, staffing. Where do I get shirts? What does my logo look like? And you go for just a little more, you could run a really reputable franchise from people who know what they're doing and have done. I know these are my 9th franchise systems I've franchised. You know, it's not my first rodeo doing this. Because I've been a franchisee many times and I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I come from a big Lebanese family, and we're all about entrepreneurship in my family.
And family, right?
Family and entrepreneurship, we're short and fat too. That's the other thing. We're 5 by 5. That's what we say about Lebanese people. They don't live long. They have a really good time while they're living. But the you know, that just is the idea that business ownership should be fun and interesting. And when you've been a franchisee, I've been a franchisee in systems that weren't fun to be in. They were you were talking about Subway is a great example. That is not a fun business to be in. I'm a huge fan of Subway. I love their products. I eat their sandwiches all the time. But I mean, the franchisees are hurting in that system because the franchisor isn't pro franchisee. Right. And it doesn't take a lot to make a system fun for franchisees. And when you have people who enjoy the business and love getting up, going to work every day, and they're excited about the work they do, and they make a lot of money, like you can't lose with that combo. Franchising is really just a 2-metric business. You need happy franchisees first. Or they have to love it, or you won't be able to sell, and they need to make money. And if you do those two things, what you'll find is half of your growth over time comes from internal expansions. People buy more units.
And you know what? I want to talk more with you about that and some of the cool things that you've done, not only to attract, but to keep and grow those franchisees. As soon as we come back from commercial, we'll hear with Thomas Scott from Home Run Franchises. We'll be right back after this commercial.
As usual, thank you for joining Pillars of Franchising. We appreciate every single one of you. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors, the Titus Center for Franchising at Palm Beach Atlantic University. You can find them on the college's website. Also, Franchise Show 247, which can be found at franchiseshow247.com. We couldn't do without our sponsors, and we appreciate their support. Don't forget, we love to have calling guests. Our number to call in is 323-580-5755. That is 323-580-5755. If you have questions for our guest or for any of our Million Dollar mentors, we welcome you to call in at any time on the show. We will do our very best to answer your calls. Stay tuned, more coming up.
Welcome back. Thank you for sticking around. We're back with Thomas Scott from Home Run Franchises here on Pillars of Franchising. So Thomas, we were just talking about happy franchisees versus not so happy franchisees.
Yeah.
So I know that you've been working a lot with Palm Beach Atlantic and the Titus Center. Let's talk a little bit about you and the work that you do with the students there and helping people get into affordable franchises.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I have daughters that are in their mid-20s, and I tell them that I identify as a Gen Z. I'm a 53-year-old Gen Z. I think we can do that now. We can identify with whatever we want. We're within that age. I'm going to choose to identify as a young entrepreneur because I think that there's an energy that, we talk about generational selling, which we can come back to in a second. But the Gen Z, the kind of currently 26 and under, that like 18 to 26 age group, is a really interesting demographic for franchising. They're just built different. And if you've been around kids that are in college at that age, they're not like we were when we were that age. When I was, when the only people who got into businesses or did businesses with their parents that were my age when I was in my early 20s were the real screw ups. That was what you did because you had no other options. That is not the case today. Those guys are, women, girl. I mean, it's, I like that they're really driven. We call them the YouTube generation because they're the first generation of people that really have grown up with YouTube. So they have an expectation of access to information and an ability to self-learn that's unparalleled. You point them in the right direction and give them in the format that they like, which is a big deal. You can't train them like you would train a 50-year-old person. You have to go much faster and condense it. Do it in smaller bites. You think this TikTok generation, but they're super coachable. And what I find is that generation is the other word we call them they're the jobs are for losers generation. The idea that you would work in an office for 40 hours a week and sit in a cubicle and give that much of your life away to an employer who really doesn't care about you just blows them away. They think that's the stupidest idea. They're like, what are you guys smoking? Who thought that idea? That sounds like a bad idea. I don't want any part of that. And we talk about the Great Resignation, but really what's happening is those people they're just doing their own thing. They're doing fractional work. They're doing side hustles, their gigs. I don't know any of them they all have a job, a side hustle, and a business. If they own a business, they own multiple businesses. They're really, really aggressive on that front. There's something like 85% entrepreneurial. It's an enormous percentage. And what I like about them is because they're coachable. If you decide, and this is what you have to do as a franchisor, is you have to say, look, franchising is not just a business to buy. It's a whole professional development path. You buy a franchise and I'm going to teach you how to become a sophisticated multi-unit business owner. That's what you're going to get in this relationship that you and I have. Is I'm going to build a pro forma with you. I'm going to help coach you all the way, and systematically as an organization, wherever you want to be in 3 or 5 years and however many units you want to have, we're going to lay that out and we're going to take that journey together, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to take the universe over because there are all these slow moving people ahead of you at our age that don't think like that, and they just have no boundaries, and they're unafraid to fail. I think this is one of the best things about them. Their idea of failure is that if you're not failing, that means you're not trying. They could fail. I tell the young entrepreneur, I've recruited 2 franchisees from Palm Beach Atlantic this year already. I was like, look, you're not even going to remember your 20s when you're 50. You
can't.
You actually can't really screw up. And they're coming into a service business. Some of them are still living at home, or they don't have the overhead that we have at our age. So their idea of winning and losing is completely different than what we think of, than a baby boomer would think of. Somebody's got been in a career for a while. So I love young workers. I really think that the Titus Center at Palm Beach Atlantic's done a fabulous job of creating a whole new generation of franchise executives and people who are really knowledgeable about franchising. It's why Chick-fil-A recruits from there. We have to I've got some franchisor friends and even the people from Chick-fil-A, and we joke about it. We're starting to fight over candidates. Like there's only so many, like 60 or 90 students in that classes, and they're all really sharp.
And now your son is going to be joining that rank too.
My son went to 10 schools. I went to school in New Orleans at Loyola. It's a Jesuit school. And I was like, you should go to my alma mater. That'd be a lot of fun. And you could go hang out in New Orleans, and what a cool city to go to school in. And he's like, I don't really like those schools. And, he went through COVID, like a lot of high school kids now, they went through COVID. They have a really stunted view of what education's like.
Oh, yeah.
And it also makes them better to recruit for franchisees. But he went to that school and saw all the kids in the entrepreneurship program studying franchising, and he was blown away. He's like, I can do this and live on the beach. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's where he's going. He was a hockey player, and he liked Forged and Fire, the show where they make knives, and wanted me to buy a forge and put it in the garage. I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to buy a forge and put it in my garage. But if you like knife making, why don't we learn how to sharpen knives? That's a really cool business. That might even be a good franchise system. And so we bought some equipment, and we both learned how to sharpen chef's knives and got into Japanese cooking knives and all that kind of stuff. And he makes about $500 a week now after school sharpening knives in Franklin, Tennessee, where we live. He does them for chefs, and he'll go to your house and pick your whole drawer up and bring it back to you a couple hours later. And it's like he's got a cool little niche business. So he's actually talked to John about, like, is that a franchisable business, and could I help me build a business plan to franchise that? Because he thinks if you're going to be an entrepreneur, the next step of entrepreneurship is to be a franchisee, and the turbo version of that is to be a franchisor. Like, he's already figured that out. It helps that he grows up in a house like ours, but all of the kids are involved in franchising. They're all like pro franchising. The two of my daughters.
Sure. And we talked about before the show, there are those of us who bought franchises to create a legacy, right? And then now we have some of these younger generations who are like, well, that's that's cool, but that's not really what I want to do. But they do see the value in franchising. They may just not want to do what we're doing. They want to do their own thing, like your son doing this knife business, right? Yeah. Right? My son's like the same age into hockey, and he's got this thing with an axe right now. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on with these boys with their sharp objects.
I don't care as long as they can make money. Yeah, but that's it's good. Hockey's an intense game. It's a lot of fun, but he's not going to play hockey in school. They don't have hockey there, so he's going to kind of switch into business, kind of the school, where that goes. But I do think there are 4 distinct generations in franchising. I'm sure you guys are aware. There's baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. Those are the 4 groups. They are radically different in their views about why people buy businesses, and I think if you're recruiting businesses, designing franchise concepts, talking to people about entrepreneurship, you have to really be aware of that. If you don't understand the way the generations fit together, if you're, for instance, if you're a baby boomer, somebody's got some jams going. But if you're a baby boomer, you were raised like a lot of people. Was the first generation that went to college, so they were raised to go to college, to work in a Fortune 500 company and work for one company your whole career and retire on a pension as early as you can, and then go to the beach and go fishing and play golf and all this. That's what the successful life path was. And that didn't work out so well. That didn't really work. And so you had these people, this whole generation of people that were taught that you should stay this really kind of safe path because all the prior generations created opportunity for you. And ended up with that, and they ended up working 70 hours a week and going through broken marriages and mental health issues and alcoholism, and a lot of bad stuff happened. So that group is really risk adverse. They weren't taught to be franchisors. They were taught just the opposite, that if you're a business owner, you're kind of strange, and you're going to end up living in a van down by the river. Like, they're not. Only 8 or 9% of baby boomers are really open to business ownership. It's a really small portion. And so you get into Gen X, which is kind of more of our I'm in my 50s, and the Gen X people looked at their parents go through all those downsizes, and I'm like, what is a pension? Like, does somebody actually have a pension, and do people actually retire? Is that like a thing that actually happens to people? And college was kind of overrated. Like, I was a lot of that with a very little ROI. I think that whole like advice on life was wrong. So we, as a generation, when we make up the largest group of buyers in franchising right now, that we just wanted work-life balance. Like I want to be able to make money and have some independence, but I really want to go to my kid's hockey game and I want to be able to go on vacation when I want to go. And, if you're my age, you're shaking your head because that's exactly what we want. So you explain the business in those terms. Like this is a business that doesn't require you to travel and it gives you some balance. You can have some control over what you do with your time. Millennials, the generation below us, which we kind of call the slacker generation, they get no credit. They're late bloomers. It's the participation trophy kind of generation. But they looked at Gen X buyers and they think, God, you guys are like capitalist pigs. You did I like the work-life balance makes sense, but you'll do anything to make money. You don't care if it's running a Hooters or doing a loan business for poor people, or you don't care. If it makes money and gives you the balance, you're happy, and like I want something a little more mission driven and authentic, and I want to make the world a better place. And so if you were at the IFA, one of the company I really love is Meals of Hope, which is a nonprofit franchise that does charity work to feed and solve hunger problems. It's an amazing business. And all their owners are millennials because that's the kind of business that emotionally resonates with those people. Millennials also make up the largest group of buyers for home care brands today. Like they're the people taking care of baby boomers because it makes the world a better place. And, so they have a really distinct way of authentic businesses, mission-driven businesses. The business has to be real and emotionally cool for them before they make money, and they make money after that. Then you get to the Gen Zs, which are the side hustle generation. They're all Gary Vee tribes people. Like they're all about like hustle and building a business and doing some cool stuff and enjoying the work you do. And they're less concerned with the mission-driven business, but more sensitive to diversity and inclusion and more sensitive to the world as it is now. Like they look at things differently than somebody my age would. But I think all those generations matter. So when you're recruiting franchisees or creating opportunity for people, you have to be really sensitive to, well, at what point in time did this person come from and like how do they view the world, or you're going to have a complete disconnect with them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what makes your brand very unique and interesting. With a low point of entry, I look at your brands and I'm thinking, wow, I could afford to do a couple of these, right? I mean, and that's really great about some home service brands is that a lot of them can piggyback, on one another quite easily. And you can share client lists, like a lot of, umbrella platform brands are doing now. And so I'm curious, do you find a lot of owners that have multiple brands within your platform?
Yeah, I have a couple. Some people have the lighting squad and dryer vents, one person up closets and a window film business because they kind of fit together. They all do. Like I think if you don't have the ability to expand in more units in your geographic area, going to a related brand makes a lot of sense. The thing about the way that I design my concepts, is we'll do more than the 4 we have as we keep going, is that we really think that we should have low overhead. They should be van-based and mobile. We like businesses that you don't have to have huge numbers of employees. So a lot of service brands like restoration is a good one. You can make a lot of money in restoration, but you have no work-life balance. You have to chase storms and leave at weird times, and you're gone for weeks at a time, and you have to have massive amounts of equipment. And you have to have really skilled technicians and an army of them. And I don't want, after running the restaurants, I don't want any part of that. My wife has one full-time installer, and it's those two, and they go out and do all kind of amazing things. And
it's funny because retail management, when I was working with a broker to buy my brand, that was one thing I said, I don't want to be a part of anybody's emergency.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nobody like needs to have window film, and that's not an emergency.
Yeah, a dirty toilet, it can wait.
Yeah. So all of our stuff is schedulable and balanced and easy to manage, and that's really important. But there are service brands like painting is really popular right now. Like that's a much harder service brand to run than any of these. Like you have to find skilled painters and 15 of them. You got to have a whole crew of people to do multiple jobs. It's hard to scale that business. It's a great profitable business, but again, it's hard to get into and kind of make work. So we like the simplicity of our brands. We look for a really particular sweet spot: affordable entry, simple to operate, easy to train, easy to market for is a big part. We haven't talked about marketing. but our whole customer acquisition kind of method is state of the art. Like we're way ahead of most people in the way we think about how to get to people. And the last part is that it needs to be specialized. I like very niche concepts, like the riches are in the niches, like for sure that works in this business, because if like you have a dryer vent problem, I'm your expert in your marketing. You know, if you need that to change a light fixture that's 20 feet off the ground, like I'm the one guy that has that problem.
Right.
And, you know, I have lots of reviews about why I'm good at that particular problem. I think that's how customers are buying services today. They're not, the market celebrates specialists and forgets generalists. So when you go have a problem, you look immediately for proof that the person you're going to hire can do that thing. You don't hire an electrician or a handyman. You hire somebody that does light fixtures, or somebody that hangs TVs, or somebody that cleans dryer vents. And if you can align a brand around changing customer behaviors, you unlock a whole level of performance for marketing that's much more affordable and productive and efficient with a higher ROI.
Yeah, all of these concepts sound really interesting and fun and easy to get into. And what would be the best way for people to get a hold of you when they're ready to make that plunge?
Sure. Well, I'm certainly on LinkedIn. Our website is homerunfranchising.com. And you'll see all of our brands, and you can connect with us. We have Calendly links. You can book a Calendly. I'm on TikTok. The official Thomas Scott is my TikTok.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, we're all over TikTok. They say in our company, they say I'm the TikTok hype man, because that's all I do. Is, but we have.
I'm jealous. I am so jealous.
It's a lot of fun. We believe in communicating emotional messages through short form video. Like we do it with our customers. We do it in our ads. We do it for franchise recruitment. You'll see a lot of my own personal branding. I talk about entrepreneurship. A lot of these topics I do in 60-second videos. We publish videos every day. And I think that's the kind of way, that's the future of marketing, really. Like if you're younger, people aren't going to go to Google for too much longer. They're going to TikTok. Like if I want to learn how to make, I like to cook. So if I want to cook a beef stroganoff, I go to TikTok and look up the recipe now. That's where I go to learn in 60 seconds or less how to cook stroganoff. That's true of everything. It's all organic search. So we're actually doing deals off of short form video. We've done 3 this year. It's kind of crazy that we're finding people and they see it and then they message you. Like I'll do a video on why, if you have a son or daughter that's in their early 20s and they're struggling in college and they want to drop out, so you should buy a business. If I could go back and buy service franchises when I was 22, oh my gosh, the runway I would have had by the time I'm 53. And they'll share my video with their kids, and the kids get excited, and then we end up talking. It's really that simple. Like, but I'm not a franchise broker or consultant. Like I'm just a franchisor, so I only have my 4 brands to sell. If I was a franchise consultant, I would be doing that kind of marketing all day long today, because they can reach so many people, thousands and thousands of people, and you can do it really inexpensively. But it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. Thomas, it was so nice to sit down and have some time to chat with you. And I can't wait to see you next month in the sunny Palm Beach of Florida.
Sure. That's going to be awesome. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed
Yeah,
the
thank you so much for your time. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to having you again.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Hey, franchise owners, how's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
Laura, welcome.
Hello.
It is so great to see you today.
Wow, I know I'm jealous. All this food talk, all the talk about Florida. I'm just, there's a lot of envy over here.
Well, I was thinking, oh my gosh, here he is. He like goes on TikTok and makes all these videos. And all I can think about is, wow, I feel so old. Like, why is it that I can't be the TikTok queen? I get so embarrassed making videos of myself. I wouldn't even know how to do that.
I do think that the younger generation, they don't have that level of, I don't know if it's just internalized, right? Like they don't have that shame. I think of like, do I look dumb in this video? And it's like, it doesn't matter because
Yeah,
everyone else is doing it too.
Yeah.
So no, it's very effective. But I agree.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about all the legalities of this fun stuff. What's on your mind today?
Well, let's see. I was thinking when I was listening to our guest, being on those 27 ladders, I was thinking about having really good insurance when you're a franchisee. Sometimes when we see owner operator franchises, right, where you don't really have to have employees, especially at first, there's a lot of states that will let those owner operators not have to carry workers' comp. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be very challenging then if there is an injury for them, to figure out, okay, how is this going to get compensated? Yes, they probably have health insurance. Maybe their spouse is still working and they have insurance through that, if not on their own. But, it is important not to overlook some of the insurance issues. I have a client right now who's looking at buying an existing business that is not a franchise, but he intends to franchise it after he's acquired it, and, had it for another year or two. And one of the things that came up immediately was, are a lot of the people who work in this business, are they misclassified as either contractors when they maybe should be employees? And so, we brought in an employment law attorney because the insurance, issue there, again, where you haven't paid unemployment insurance, it will come back to haunt you.
Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine, especially if you think about some of the people who are up on ladders, whether they're cleaning windows or changing light bulbs, or, any kind of high fall, or working with electric.
Right.
I cannot imagine what that puts.
Right. And that's not to say everybody's going to need it, right? And these businesses, the margins are high enough that they can certainly afford to have insurance. But, it's important not to skimp on that just because, you're like, oh, I'm just getting started, I'll deal with it later.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you something along the lines of some of the things that Thomas talked about that I think is really cool. And I know that our franchisor does that too. Let's talk about some of the insurance type things that are needed when you have a fleet of cars, say. Things like that, right? Even though maybe you don't necessarily hold the entire note because you have the backing of your franchisor, what does that mean in terms of insurance and things that you have to carry?
Yeah. So, when you have fleets or you have multiple vehicles, obviously, and that assumes that you have multiple people who are driving, right? It's not just the owner. So, not only will you have, regular auto liability for underinsured or uninsured motorists, you probably will also need to have, hired motorists, which means that you're using it, it might be someone else who's driving. It's not just the owner. That can really affect your premiums. Like I know another client that I've worked with where, they have had, they didn't check people's driving records before they hired them, but it is a business where they need to drive. They just asked, do you have a driver's license?
Yes.
Okay. And they did have a driver's license. However, once they got in there, they had to tell their insurance company who was going to be driving, right? It's these 5 people or whatever. And their rate immediately spiked. They're up for renewal like a month later. And it's because they had people come on board who had really terrible driving records, not necessarily with them, right? But it's the risk analysis that the insurance company is doing to cover themselves that, okay, if you've had multiple accidents before, it's likely that you'll have another one. And they don't want to be stuck holding the bag.
So who's responsible for running that? Is the franchisee responsible or is the insurance company?
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, the franchisee is the employer of those employees, right? Or, if they're contractors and they're letting them use the vehicle for some reason,
Sure.
they're the one who has the vehicle and they are the one who has to carry the insurance on it. So, I would say it's just like running background checks, right? It's one thing that somebody says, oh yeah, I've never, done whatever. I've never, I don't know. I've
Never
had a
stolen.
right, never stolen. Yeah. But it's pretty important to double check that.
Yeah, yeah. I would have to guess that perhaps, and I'm not an HR expert, so I can't say for sure. You'd have to certainly check with your HR expert, that you can't not hire them for that, or I shouldn't say you can't not hire. You can't fire them for a poor driving record, but you can prevent them from being a driver.
That's
In
probably
this
the case.
case.
Yeah, I don't specifically do a lot of employment law exactly, but I would much rather have people be doing those checks before they even hire someone if it's preventable.
Yeah.
And try and find out if it happens, later on and they already work there, so be it. But if it's preventable, they may be the best at whatever they do, but it's going to cost you so much more to hire them.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I'm very clear. So if I have a business and I have a contractor that comes in and does work for me, and comes to find out he has a record of, I don't know, theft or something, and then I have a client who says, oh, I'm missing this, diamond bracelet. Obviously he's not my employee, but he did work on behalf of me.
Right. Yeah. And so in a lot of those scenarios, I mean, it is a question ultimately of what the insurance coverage, specifically says, but
Sure.
in most cases, contractors are not covered on the general, businesses employment, not employment, but just insurance policy. They're not covered because they're not an employee.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only covered when it's an employee. And most people, they don't realize that, you'd have to be requiring that person got their own insurance, and then that the company was added as an additional insured on that policy. And that's, frankly, just too much effort for what the general business person is going to do to hire someone, just as a contractor, right? Unless they have a long-term established relationship, that's just too much.
Yeah, especially, and for me in a franchise system, my personal choice would be to have a model that I don't need to worry about all that. I mean, on a personal side, we just had a contractor whose invoice is listed 4 different contractor licenses. We'll come to find out only one was sort of valid in one city, but in the other cities, they hadn't been paid for it. And the other ones, the numbers didn't even exist. They were bogus numbers.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know you could check them out. I didn't even know how to check them out. So,
right. Yeah. And that's something too. Yeah. You have to think about, and if you do work in different municipalities, what are the different rules, right? Like, the client that I have who's buying that business that he intends to franchise later, he personally is in the South, right?
Yeah.
He's down in the Carolinas, and he's buying a business that's here in Chicago, even though he doesn't live here, doesn't intend to live here. And, I had to kind of say to him, like, look, you do work in the city of Chicago as well as in the suburbs. Like, there's a whole other side of employment law that only applies when you are in the city to the people in the city, right? There's sick time, like all of these things. And he was kind of like, oh. And, I introduced him to another attorney who exclusively does employment law, because I don't want him to not know these things, right? He needs to be a good employer.
yeah.
But there's a big curve that most people don't know, right? If you've always lived somewhere else, or maybe you never worked in the city, that you're doing business in now, you got to double check.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of people who buy franchises and say, no, I really want to retire in Florida or California, and therefore that's where I want to start my franchise. And the first conversation is, you better make sure you're familiar with the laws there, because HR law, labor law, California, that's a big
Right.
one.
Yeah. And different things are, easy to license or hard to license depending on where you are. Yeah. If you're not a business that doesn't require, permitting of some sort, besides maybe a, certificate of occupancy, you really do need to check on that.
Well, as always, Laura, thank you very much for your expertise and your legal advice. We certainly appreciate it. Hopefully we can see you again next week.
Yeah.
Here we are. Yeah. Oh, I thought Kristin was going to be on this one too. So, oh, okay. Okay. Ask away, Grand Poobah. That's okay. They don't need to see any more than my brain. Well, I'd certainly start looking from on Google, to see what's available out there. And I'm sure that from there you can find other sites that are more precisely for resales. But I think the important question is, what is the process? And in my mind, the process begins pretty much the same as you would look for any franchise. So if you're looking for a particular one, then you got to pretty much decide where you want to be. And of course, when you narrow that scope, you probably narrow the scope of the franchises that are available. And it does not matter whether it's a new one or a resale. Once you get to the point where you've actually found one, then I think at that point you need to dig a little deeper than you would for a new franchise. And what I mean by that is why is that franchise for sale? And it really doesn't matter too much what is said at that point. I believe what you really need to know is, are you incurring anything that had caused the original owner to put it up for sale? Is there a lot of debt? Are there other reasons that you're unaware of? And that's where you hire someone like Laura to dig into that system. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. Yeah, I would imagine they would let you know as well. That's certainly, it's the same thing if you're buying a home. I mean, you can find what do they call them, FISBOs, for sale by owner. you know, I'm sure they're out there, and if you do the research well enough, you can find it. And just like with buying a home, you could probably get it a little cheaper. But if you have a broker, now some of the things we just talked about, she may or he may be able to do that. So why don't we bring Kristin in and let her talk a little bit about that? That's okay. She's bigger than life anyway.
Well, so you guys certainly did mention a couple of the ways, and you know, Ray, you're right. If you want to do it on your own, like you're buying a house for sale by owner, franchise for sale, biz by sell, there's a lot of, I'll call them search places out there. And many of them in some way or form are tied to either brokerage houses or specific brokers, right? That's how they appear. That's what's behind them. There is a large misnomer in that there are only a few brokers out there who actually charge the buyer to help find a franchise. Most all brokers are paid by the brand that they sell. So some would say, well, then how do I know that you have my best interest in mind? That's really where building a relationship comes from. I think if you are dead set on a brand, you drive by that coffee shop every day, Big B Coffee, and you're like, I really want that location. I really want that brand. I heard that lady's struggling and I'd like to buy her out. Then by all means, you don't need a broker to go and do that. You talk to that owner, you call Big B Coffee direct and say, hey, I need to know, do you have any for sale? And you start having them disclose for you, which means send you the franchise disclosure document. You start doing your research. The benefit, even on a resale, to using a broker is that a broker can help you navigate that big, ugly FDD and help make sure that you don't miss spot in the FDD. They can help you make sure you remember to validate. They can guide you along with what types of questions you want to ask, even if you have selected the brand. So those are the things that I think you should find value in a broker for. Brokers don't make a lot of money on a resale, not as much as they would on a new. But if you find a broker who's not really in it about the money, they're really in it to help people, that doesn't really matter, you know? Sure. Okay. Correct. That is not to say that all brokers don't, but it is a select few that do. And those select few will state that they do it because it's their best interest. They still get paid from the franchisor in addition to getting paid by you. So take it or leave it. I'm not judging anybody, but yes. Mm-hmm. It's probably a flat fee. Yes. So every broker should have a slew or 3 or 4. I have 2 or 3 that I would typically work with based on relationships and reputation and the current situation that you happen to be in. Where besides California should you buy? There are, well, so there's a couple things. There are many states that are more business friendly, we will say. They may not be states where I would want to live, but I'll use one that's close by here. Indiana is a super business friendly state. There are a couple of states that are difficult for franchisors and brokers to do business in addition to California being difficult for franchisee. Washington and New York are more complicated to do business in. There's actually, I believe it's, forgive me if I'm wrong, 16 states that are a little more complicated for franchisors to do business in because they're registration states. And so some franchisors wait and expand into those states once they've developed a good amount of franchises in the non registration states first. So, you know, it depends on what exactly you're looking for. So if you just came to me, Fred, and you said, you know what, I'm not really sure what I want to buy, but I know I want it to be a resale, I would take you through the same process that I would take somebody who's not sure what they want to buy new. And quite frankly, if I was talking to you about just buying a new one of the questions I would ask you is, have you considered buying a resale? You know, the difference between buying something new and buying a resale is A, how much do you have to put in and how quickly do you need to make money back? Because sometimes while you put money in more quickly, you're generating cash more quickly as well. So it's not like me who opened up in 2007, hit the recession and didn't make money for 5 years. You know what I mean? It's totally different. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, right now, I mean, we just talked to Thomas Scott, right? I mean, really the hot item right now, which is super recession proof, and because everybody's been, you know, tied up at home for 2 years, is all the home improvement stuff. I mean, those are super, super hot. And there are actually a lot of fast food concepts that are still hot as well. So yeah, I know. And in spite of some of the, you know, there's some fitness programs out there. The one I really like, and it's just still too young for me to put it on my favorite list, though in my heart, it's going to be one of my favorites. I just know it is a mental health concept aimed at teens, because we are so shy on mental health professionals and resources for people coming out of COVID. And there's just so many troubled teens right now. So it is. Yeah, the market's getting quite saturated. So that's the only thing I'm waiting to see is how many players can you really fit. I mean, there's a lot of the players that are there have a lot of expanding to do. So do you see exponential growth within those brands, or do you see more brands popping up? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball.
Well, I'm going to make a statement here. I think one of the things that from our conversation people should realize that hiring someone like Kristin or even the mentors of Pillars is probably a really good idea, simply because we know more about what's happening in the franchise industry. So you may have some ideas about buying a used franchise or resale, but maybe Kristin can say, you know what, I've got this new concept. You can get in for less money and probably make money faster. So if you don't go out there and seek the help that's available for you, then I think you're making a huge mistake. What do you say, Kristin?
Yeah, I think that's really true. I've been working with somebody in Iowa who has some concerns financially and how much you can really invest. And, I texted him on a commercial and I said, we need to talk about Thomas Scott and the brands he has to offer, because they even do some financing of franchise costs. And I think this is a great option for you. And it's right in the field that he wants to be in. And so the thing is, the more people the more networks you're in, the more you're involved in franchising, the more opportunities pop up. And I always knew with that client, we were looking for something in the home improvement. That's his passion, but it was always the cost of entry. And now I have an option, right? Now I found one that fits. And the thing is, like I said, I've met Thomas several times. I know the circle of people he runs with. He's good people. It's not like this huge platform brand where, it's had 3 or 4 different CEOs in the last few years. I know his daughter. Like, I feel good about recommending a brand like that. And so not everybody can say, listen, I know this guy. I know his background. I know what he's about. I want you to look at this brand. And so I think those are some of the things and I certainly felt that way with the gal who was my broker, Britt Schroeder, when I bought Maid, and we still keep in touch today. We had her on the show a while back. Yeah. And so those are the things, it's not that people hire me, right? It's that they're looking for a partner in this journey to find the brand that fits them, right? Because I don't sell you. I'm not here to sell you. I'm just here to help you find what feels like it fits your skin, So that's all I got to say about that. Yeah. Who would have thunk?
Certainly listen to Pillars and Pillars, and listen to the mentors we have. Listen to everyone on here. Delve into the industry as much as you can. Find out as much as you can about a particular vertical that you're looking at. Just immerse yourself in everything you can find, and so you can make a good, solid decision that you're going to feel good about.
Thank you, Ray.
You bet. Thank you.
Oh, a wise guy, eh?
Oh my goodness. I don't know what to say about the show today, but I would like to thank all of you for joining us on the show today. And thank you to our guest, Thomas Scott of Home Run Franchises. As always, we appreciate Ray Pillar, our producer, Fred McMurray, and Elizabeth Denham. I hope you're enjoying your vacation time. Best of luck to Jerry and Andrea, who are on their way back from IFA. And Karen, we're so glad you're feeling better. We look forward to seeing you hopefully next week. We're thinking about you still. I am Kristin Selmeczy, and together we are your resource for franchising success. That's a mouthful. And we hope you... Yeah, this has been another episode of Pillars of Franchising. And remember, the dream starts here. We'll see you next week.
Franchising.